Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk to you about astrology and Vedic astrology in particular. Um, I've been doing this for Greater New Bedford Cable TV for the past few years. Uh, excuse me, yeah, about a year and I think at least a year. And I've also had this YouTube channel up and operational for around the same amount of time. And I'd like to talk to you about the upcoming elections, or not the elections, the upcoming inauguration from a Vedic perspective, and also what we can expect over the next few months in light of what happened in Washington on January 6th, and also in terms of the inauguration. So I'm not going to look at the January 6th chart. I did that last week. I'll look at the inauguration chart, and I'll look at the U.S. chart, and I'll look at President-elect Biden's chart, and also at charts for the current chart. So if you be patient with me, I'll just float those up. And for the first time, I'm going to look at Kamala Harris's chart just for a second. All right, so we have, all right, so this is Kamala Harris's chart. I didn't want to start off with that one. Let me go over here. I'm going to go to a current chart and now chart. And now charts I like to use because that's what's happening when I'm actually doing the recording. So essentially, I hope you can see that. I'll do a new share and a resume share, just so you can see the chart. New share. I don't want to do a new share. Let's do I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to do a share. And we are still going ahead with plans to do classes and to start a school, and I'm also teaching at Kepler College. And you can actually contact me for readings at 508-525-0001 or at crystalexpectations@comcast.net. I'm also on Facebook. I have about 3 or 4 sites you can reach me through on Facebook. And also, if you can like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, it would be greatly appreciated. Comments would be very helpful because that lets YouTube know you're interested and interested in what I'm doing. Now, when I started this chart, this is the second attempt I had of recording this chart. And this is actually a good thing because what this actually does is it changes the perspective from when I started the chart to when I'm actually recording the chart. So essentially, when I started the chart, this is a Vedic astrology chart. That's Pisces in the upper left, Aries next to it, Taurus next to it, Gemini next to that. It was a Gemini rising, and there were a lot of planets in the 8th house. So that meant that all kinds of skullduggery was going around. And essentially, what I mean by that is you have people conspiring, active to trying to actively undercut the inauguration story, and other sources also trying to actively undercut broadcasting and accurate coverage. So I still that's still a focus, but essentially with the moon in the 8th house in this chart, accompanied by Neptune, which I normally don't use, but I just figured I'd use it because it's such a dominant planet right now. There will be a kind of this will be kind of an idealistic month for a lot of people, an idealistic week for a lot of people. I'm broadcasting this on January 16th in case you can't read the small print on the now chart. And you'll also see a lot of people kind of unhappy with what's going on. That's no surprise. We all know that that's true. And Jupiter's aspecting that Rahu, which will make them more unhappy. Um, so, and also you look at the chart. There's an almost equal conflict between both sides. The sun represents government, moon represents change, but the change is going to be stuck for a while. It's going to be stuck for a couple of months. And the reason I'm saying that is because you'll have, number one, you probably will have violent acts on inauguration day. I'm going to look at the inauguration chart in a few minutes. And we're going to come back to this chart at the end of the session to just see how the planets affect you personally. And also you'll have a lot of media. The media will sort of like be segued between Jupiter and Saturn. It's kind of trying to move ahead of that and trying to escape from pressure to um, the pressure to control, I would call it, and also the pressure of scrutiny, extra scrutiny. So you're going to see the media, and I'm talking about that, I mean big internet providers, cable news networks, the major media outlets around the world under a lot of scrutiny over the next few years, more so in 2023, I think, because essentially there'll be more evidence of media manipulation, and I'm not just talking about from the media companies themselves, but also actors trying to manipulate media. And this will also improve governments. There'll be a large in 2023. I think there'll be a large scandal connected with media companies. So essentially, and you notice I'm not being specific. I'm deliberately not being specific. I'm going to look at charts of various media companies over the next few weeks and tell you which ones I think are going to have the most problems, if I can find them. But basically, from this chart, this is, we look at the seat of power, which is essentially um, the first house, which is the moon. The seat of power is in the eighth house. So again, there's something that's going to be subverted or wrong. It's going to take a lot of um, adjustments for this particular um, transition of power to work. And it probably won't be fully complete until around the end of March. I said that in the recording, which I couldn't use, and I'm saying it right now. It'll take a while for this administration to get its stuff together. I'm not saying whose fault this is. To be honest with you, I think in part is they've had a tough time, but they'll be making it tougher for themselves if they get into an impeachment trial. And I just think it's going to be one of those things where they're going to be um, taking on more than they can chew for the first couple of months. Also, I don't think we're going to have a really stable government until really around 15 years from now, because the United States is in a state of massive fluctuation. Um, the chart hasn't been quite this way since the Revolutionary War, and also since the days of Teddy Roosevelt, when there was a lot of focus on monopoly busting and trust busting and all those kinds of things. So I think what you're going to see is kind of a repeat or like a gelling together of those two movements. And I haven't seen a chart this active since 1968 or since the late 1960s, excuse me, when the civil rights movement was in full sway, and there were also protests against the war in Vietnam and protests. So those were the two big protest movements when I was growing up. Uh, this one will be a lot more global because Ketu was the major planetary period then, and that's inherently disruptive, and essentially it just makes people super violent. So I can't, and I've said this on broadcast before, from around 1960, I say 1963 to 1971, I can't recall a year in which there wasn't a major riot in the cities. I think this will be more localized. I think you're going to see more of this, a combination of both civil right, civil rights protests and far right protests. So this is going to be kind of a dangerous time for the country. I wish I were wrong, but I don't think I am. And I think the coverage will be trimmed back a notch, but it'll still be going on. The other thing is you have from charts like this, um, Venus is in the sixth house in the chart. It was in the fifth house in the chart. I looked at before. Um, Nobody's going to be really happy with what's going on over the next few months, and you will see sort of what I would call this is what's causing the backlog in medications being put through because Venus tends to rule allopathic medications. The moon is inside of Vishak Nakshatra. It takes 100 doctors to cure a disease, which starts under Sadabhishak Nakshatra. You know, so Sadabhishak Nakshatra is very stubborn. It's very courageous, but it's very stubborn. So politically and medically, you'll see this real effort to get things under control, and it won't happen really until the end of March, and I would say even as far as the end of April, when Jupiter enters Aquarius, and it'll things will start to calm down when Jupiter enters Aquarius, and then start to rile up again around September of this year, September 15th or so. The other thing that I'm looking at is a lot of reform, a lot of hearings on media coverage. The impeachment trial, I'm not going to talk about that right now. And the reason I'm not is because I think we're too close to it. I think people are too um, ticked off right now. And I want to get a fair feel. I want to do a good analysis on that for you folks. I think they will try to do an impeachment trial as soon as Joseph Biden gets sworn in as president. I think that'll be unwieldy, and I think it'll cause a lot of delays towards things that really need to be done. Um, and I'm not coming down on either side about whether an impeachment trial needs to be done or not, but I think there are more pressing issues. Personally, I think there are more pressing issues. The other thing is um, Mars is aspecting K2, so we can expect some continued violence over the next couple of months. In terms of the inauguration chart, let's look at that. All right, so the inauguration chart is, so we have a Moon Mars conjunction in the first house. This is noontime, January 20th, 2021. Rahu in the second house, so there will be a lot of, I would say, angry rhetoric coming out of it, even coming from the president, the new president, um, and a lot of disturbing rhetoric coming from it. Venus is in the ninth house. Sun, Jupiter, Mercury is in the 10th house. So those two planets indicate a reconciliatory tone, but also all the planets are in what's called the Kala Sarpa Yoga. So all the planets are heading towards Rahu, and they're being swallowed by Rahu, basically. So this phenomenon it's happened relatively frequently over the past few years, but this really delays progress in getting things done. Um, The Kala Sarpa probably won't end until for about 3 months or so, 3 to 4 months or so. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm saying you're going to see a lot of delays in action. If we're talking about the epidemic, I think you will see a lot of progress in terms of the epidemic, the pandemic, after April 27th. And I think you'll start to see life return to normal fully by September. That's just my estimate based upon the planetary movements. The other thing is, so this will be an angry inauguration, so there will be conspiracies with K2 in the 8th house. There will be, I think there'll be violence, personally. Um, and it'll be well organized and hidden. I don't think they're going to manage to catch all of it. And if I'm right, and I hope I'm not right about this, um, there'll tend to be kind of a crackdown over the next couple of years in the United States. So you'll see basically almost a return to a 9/11 kind of a scenario, and also suppression of speech, which is not going to sit well with a lot of people. As a matter of fact, even Angela Merkel and other countries across the world are reacting badly to some of the things that some of the social media sites have done, and they're not really um, impressed by it. And there have been moves in Europe already to regulate social media sites, not in terms of censorship, but in terms of um, the excessive amount of control they have, or the extraordinary, not excessive, the extraordinary amount of control they have. So uh, stay tuned. It's going to be a little bit interesting, especially over the next 5 years. Also, if I want to point out perhaps something that's the obvious. Um, the United States is in a what's called a 7.5 year period of Saturn. So that usually indicates a time when the United States is plagued by scandals, disruptions. Um, the last 7.5 year Saturn that we had was during the Clinton administration, and there were continual efforts um, and continuous investigations of the Clinton White House until they finally managed to get um, enough votes for an impeachment. You will see Congress switch over the next couple of years again. Um, that's that's not just a predictable outcome. I just think it's the way that things are going in terms of the chart. If we're looking at, so this is going to be kind of it's not a good start to a presidency. It would be true if Donald Trump were in office too. So I mean, this kind of like cuts both ways. The other thing is if we have, now look at Joe Biden's chart. Now Joe Biden's chart is a little bit questionable because it was one of those things. Apparently, they came from memory, so those aren't trustworthy charts. But Joe Biden was born um, with a Scorpio rising sign, Scorpio sun, Saturn in the 7th house. Now, he's right now he's in a Jupiter Rahu Mahadasha. Jupiter's in his 9th house. It's exalted in Cancer, but retrograde. And it's also Virgosima. So Jupiter's actually been a very lucky major planetary period for him. He's been in it for the past um, 15 years, roughly, 14, 15 years. So it's been a kind of a fortunate planetary period for him. He's coming to the end of that planetary period on September 22nd, 2022. Um, I'm not wishing ill upon anybody. But he has K2 transiting his 1st house right now, which will make him a little bit erratic or quick to temper, a little bit unpredictable. And he has Rahu with Saturn in the seventh house, which means he'll have partners who are kind of greedy or ambitious and plotting. And he has a Rahu transit to his moon in 2022, which could be problematic for him. He'll give a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry. He has Saturn, he'll enter a Saturn major planetary period in September 22nd, 2022. Saturn's in what's called a death inflicting house. It doesn't necessarily mean he's going to die, but chances are he'll get sick. And chances are, at least from what I've seen from the US chart, chances are we're not going to see more than one term presidents over the next 12 years. Um, there may be a couple of it, there may be one exception, but I think that at least from the chart, it looks to be pretty unstable. I'm not wishing ill on Vice President Biden or on President-elect Biden, excuse me. But I think his chart is troubled, and there's some danger in his chart. Let me just look at Kamala Harris's chart. I'll get back to regular business. All right, now Kamala has a fairly good. She's in a pretty good major planetary period. She's in Mercury sub-period. She's in Rahu Mahadasha. Rahu's in her first house, so that'll make her famous. And Mercury's the dispositor of Rahu. Is in the fifth house, which is a house of politics, but it's also a house of luck. So she's in a pretty good period and sub-period right now between January 5th and June 9th of 2021. That changes a bit for her around, and she'll be in a good planetary period roughly until around January 20th of 2023. It changes a little bit for her around January 20th of 2023 because she'll have some problems in connection with her spouse, either some kind of scandal or some kind of loss connected with the spouse. So that's something to keep in mind as we're looking at the chart, and also maybe some losses of position. Usually K2 gives some kind of a scandal or some kind of a flaw that a person has to overcome. It doesn't necessarily mean they'll be ejected from office, but K2 sub-periods usually aren't good, at least not for maintaining or sustaining position or status. They're normally they won't necessarily push a person out of a position, but they will lower their status. Now she does come back into a Venus major planetary period, which is pretty well placed in her chart. In the third house, but not a favorable house, but it's in the third house. And it could give her some wealth, some financial wealth, and some status. So that period between February 24th and of February 7th, 2024 and February 7th, 2027 could be very good for her. But like I said, but then she enters the sun sub-period, and her sun is very, very weak. So her sun's debilitated in the fifth house. So this is her chart sort of like, it's good. It's really good until like around January 20th, 2023, especially around April 23rd, 2022. It does tend to break up a bit though after January 20th, 2023, and it'll bounce back again in 2024, but it'll fail again in 2027. So this is an interesting kind of a chart to look at. So I'm not making any predictions about who's going to be, whether or not Kamala is going to take over for Joe. From the chart certainly suggests that, but I'm by no means certain of that. So let's look over here at the US chart just quickly. And I want to look at let me just look at one more time at the inauguration chart. and see what's happening in terms of transits. Not transits, but astrocartography. So, oh boy, we have a bunch of lines close to Washington. Okay, so if you look at this carefully, you'll see there'll be hmm, a lot of activity between, um, it looks like Michigan to me, Minnesota, Arizona, California, not so much. Washington State, probably. Um, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York. Um, Washington definitely will be, it's kind of like clustered in between these two lines. One's a Mars line and one's a Sun line. So there'll be anger or possibly riots. And the next line to that is, so we have a Mars line right here. This over here is a Venus line. This is another moon line, shows up in Georgia. So these are all potential hotspots for in the United States. Also, even in Puerto Rico, there'll be some activity. However, I don't want to just end Florida. However, I just don't want to focus on the United States and South Carolina, but I don't want to just focus on the United States because these lines are running through Cuba and South America. They'll impact Western um, South America pretty strongly too. And Mercury will impact Brazil, and so will the moon. So what does that mean in terms? So it means there'll be some kind of communication outage or communication crackdown in Brazil, um, and also you have a Moon Mars line over Sweden, Norway, and throughout Central Europe and into Northern Africa, and throughout the middle of Africa, or throughout excuse me, southwest of Africa. So, so essentially, this region right here, roughly from Sweden and Norway, all the way through Germany, Italy, um, most of Africa will be in turmoil during this period. And you'll also see some communications problems winding up in Egypt and throughout Greece. And also some communication problems coming from Iran right here. And also some violence in China, some disruption in government in China, and also down here in New Guinea. Excuse me, that's no, I think that's Malaysia. My apologies. Um, yeah, so it's going to be kind of a rough period between now and January 28th, and you have a Rahu line going to Australia, so Australian government's also going to have some problems as well. So the major areas I would look at would be Russia, Iran, um, Central Europe, Central Africa, roughly, and also large sections of the United States, East Coast, um, Western South America, and the middle of the United States, so roughly around Michigan through Florida, and um, roughly Minnesota through Louisiana, and also Washington, Washington State, excuse me. So those are going to be rough spots for a lot of people. As I said, in this particular sign, Venus is not necessarily peaceful. Its feelings get hurt easily. Venus's feelings get hurt easily when it's in Sagittarius, um, because it's kind of an idealistic placement. Whenever you see Jupiter in Venus's sign or Venus in Jupiter's sign, there tends to be kind of, it isn't so much a dogma as it is a real passion for um, justice or doing the right thing. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that one side or another side is correct. So I have to emphasize that. It means, um, so there's a tendency in Vedic astrology to associate Jupiter with the correct side on things, but Jupiter is debilitated right now. It's not necessarily going to be strong and take positive action. Venus is more inclined to take action as a planet than Jupiter is. Um, as I told you last week, one of the most violent incarnations of Vishnu was Parashurama, and Parashurama made it his duty in life after his family was killed by warriors and other leaders to kill those leaders 3 times over. So I'm not saying the act is justified. This is an incarnation of God, essentially cleansing the world of evil people. That's not how I'm viewing people who want to take, who want to engage in violent activity. To be honest with you, Parashurama is a story. The times were very different then. Um, this isn't how we handle things nowadays. Is um, but that impulse will be there. That impulse to correct perceived injustices through violence. So when you're looking at Venus, if you're in astrology, when you're looking at Venus in a chart, that usually shows the part of life the person is very passionate about, that they're very involved in, that they would sacrifice anything for. And so Venus is in Sagittarius, it will sacrifice itself for what it perceives as being ethics or the right path. So Venus is a planet of sacrifice. It rules over relationship life. I don't know of anybody who's ever been in a relationship who has not had to sacrifice something, although the reward is is very often worth it. But there usually has to be some kind of a give and take in a relationship, and passion, devotion to a spouse, or in this case, a cause, will override um, logic. Mars is really the perpetrator of logic in a Vedic chart, and Mars is aspecting Ketu, so that can make a kind of a tinderbox combination. If you want to pull in Western astrology, Mars is with Uranus right now, about 2 degrees apart. So I don't know exactly how this is going to pan out, but my guess is there'll be violent activities, mass arrests, and also um, some mass suppression over the next couple of years. So, so, it, so again, this is not to be pessimistic. This is just to be honest with you folks. And but also, as I said last week, this is also a time for people to really focus on what they want and to bring their goal sets into accord. January 28th is a very auspicious day. It's a very good day to put your goals into action. And I think if you do that, especially things connected with the heart or things connected with career or life, if you do that on January 28th, if you take positive action towards some kind of long-term goal you've had, on January 28th will be extremely lucky for you. But looking at the rest of the chart, we have some real challenges up ahead. All right, so let's go back to the birth chart, or into the chart that I pulled up before. Not the birth chart, but essentially the chart for today. And this will give you a snapshot on what the signs can expect over the next few weeks. And I'll focus on eclipses next week. Because we're going to have some interesting eclipses. All right, let me just correct this. Okay, so for Aries, a lot of aggressive energy, a lot of focus on career over the next couple of weeks. Focus on financial gains. You'll actually get some good financial gains and your luck will be very strong. But you'll have to fight for what you want, at least from this chart. You won't feel like you're being satisfied even if you get exactly what you want, though. That's the only drawback to this pattern. And this will be true for about the next year. For Taurus, this would be from May 15th to June 15th using an Indian calendar, using a sidereal calendar, not an Indian calendar, a sidereal calendar, a sidereal chart, or a star-based chart. Rahu is in the first house, good for getting what you want. Ketu is in the seventh house. Relationship partners seem difficult to deal with, or cranky or cantankerous, and no fun. They'll pass within about a month or so, in which time you'll be the one that's difficult to keep happy and will be bursting into temper. It'll be a difficult period for most Taurus and Scorpio individuals. We'll get to Scorpio in a few minutes, especially in terms of keeping relationships together over the next between roughly February and April of 2021. It won't be impossible, but it'll be difficult, and there'll be a lot of arguments in those signs. But again, career life looks good. Taurus may have a career change, or they may receive some public notoriety. The Sun, you have 4 planets in the ninth house. You'll have luck from 4 different quarters, although Saturn aspecting the 11th will delay some financial gains you've been expecting. And there'll also be unexpected money coming in from relationship partners if you're in a relationship. Third house is Gemini. Gemini is aspected by Venus, so that gives some indication that relationship life will be happier. The person will be able to do more of what they want to do between June 15th and July 15th. But they'll be spending a lot of money. They'll be kind of unhappy with their lives. Not in a bad way, but they'll feel like they're being cheated or hurt by people around them. And also, communications will be bad for this sign. Um, there'll be a lot of feelings of people essentially being underhanded with them, and that'll last for about 11 days. So by the end of the month, that feeling of persecution will be gone. In terms of family life, you should watch out for health situations, but relationship life will actually look like it's improving. For Cancer's from July 15th to August 15th. You'll have more career success, more aggravation though, a lot of pressure put on you career-wise. And I think from this chart, a lot of relationship pressure as well. So you'll see relationship partners be a little bit more difficult to deal with, very demanding, very awkward to deal with them. Again, illnesses, be careful about overeating, drinking too much, those kinds of things. Venus is in the sixth house. It doesn't like it when people overeat or drink. It'll tend to make them a little bit clumsy to deal with. For Leo, that's August 15th to September 15th. Gulick and Mandy are in the second house. Those are two little planets that I don't mention very much, but they're kind of a drain on income or earnings, so they'll hurt earnings a little bit from this chart. And the person will have to really engage in a lot of effort to get what they want. And I think when you look at this particular sign, Venus is in the fifth house, so that's good for career matters. So it'll be a great career opportunity for the sign, but they'll have to work really, really hard. They'll have to adjust really, really hard um, in order to get what they want. Moon is in the seventh house. Again, good for potential relationship partners, although there may be two coming up. And if you're in a married relationship, just be careful about getting involved with other people. Virgo is the sixth sign. The period that Virgo covers in Vedic astrology is September 15th to October 15th. Luck is good, but variable. Rahu's in the ninth house. There will be some outbursts or some aggression from relationship partners because of Mars aspecting the second house, and this is also what's called Mars affliction in the Vedic chart. So this sign will have problems with being taken advantage of by the relationship partners. Uh, you have, you have K2 in the third house, so this sign will be more courageous than it normally is, more interested in physical activity, more interested in trying to get in line what it wants to get in line. Venus is in the fourth house. This sign will be rather soft-hearted or rather um, easily hurt during this month. Um, so home life will be pleasant, but it won't be nice. Yeah, if that makes sense. And also, they'll be expected to do things which are ethically maybe a little bit questionable because of the Jupiter, Saturn, Sun, Mercury conjunction in the fifth house. Dealings with children, past life credit will be strong. There'll be a lot of past life credit for extra work. Um, and Moon will be in the sixth house, so they do have to be careful of illnesses during this time. They'll have to be very conscientious about who they come into contact with, and also how they deal. They shouldn't deal. They shouldn't get involved at all with alcohol or drugs during this time period. As a matter of fact, if they can, they should try to quit some bad habits they have. Libra, career-wise, they look okay. Career-wise, they look very, very busy. As busy as almost any time in their past lives. Another past, not their past lives, excuse me, their past few years. Libra has K2 in the second house, so this sign will seem a little bit detached or aloof. Venus will be in the third house. They won't want to take chances. Saturn, Mercury, and Jupiter will be in the fourth house, along with Sun. This will make a light shine on their career life, but it will give them also a lot of additional work, as it did for Virgo. And the moon is in the fifth house, which is generally good, so it gives potential for love affairs or romantic involvements. Mars is in the seventh house, kind of difficult for relationship life, though, with current relationship partner. And the 10th house is fully aspected by four planets in the fourth house. This gives great career boom or great career success. Scorpio. Scorpio has K2 in it. This sign will become very intuitive this month, very, very aware of its surroundings. That's October 15th through November 15th. Venus will be in the second house. It'll have more money coming in. A lot of courage and desire to do new things with Saturn, Mercury, Sun, Jupiter in the third house. The moon is in the fourth house. They may decide they want to take up something new educationally or change residences during this month. Mars is in the sixth house. Again, be careful with temper. Be careful with what you eat because this sign is more susceptible to illnesses this year than almost at any time. Um, the Rahu is in the seventh house, so this can give some tension with relationship partners. Relationship partners will seem impossible to keep happy. They'll be criticizing or making life difficult for you. Career life looks okay. There's not a lot of negative happening career wise. As a matter of fact, this person may get work based upon their previous experiences. And in terms of financial gains, this should also be a good month. For Sagittarius, again, that kind of like fight until you drop attitude is there with Venus in the first house, even though it's a very sensitive sign, even though it's a very difficult sign for Venus. It loves to take care of animals. It loves to take care of especially large animals, and it loves to view itself as a peacekeeper. So essentially, from this chart, you'll see a lot of people trying to espouse peace or trying to, but also trying to shut down other opinions. And that's mainly because of Saturn being in the third house. It's a strong desire to control people and to, or Saturn being in the second house, excuse me. And there's a strong desire to control people or to control what they think and what they say because we have a Saturn, Jupiter, Sun, Mercury conjunction here. The moon is in the third house, so strong desire for change, but not sure which direction to go in. Mars is in the fifth house, very good for work connected with housing, work connected with children. And Rahu's in the sixth house, so again, avoid alcohol. A lot of signs should avoid alcohol or drugs this month because a lot of signs have planets in the sixth house. And it's not that I'm trying to stop anybody from having a good time. It's just that it'll hurt you over this coming month. Um, Career wise, again, it looks okay. Career life is being stifled a little bit by communications problems, but that'll pass within about 12 days. For Capricorn rising, we discussed this a lot last week. Capricorn is going to be the sign this year, mainly because Saturn's in the sign. It stays there for 2.5 years. It's only been in around 6 months already, so we have at least another year and a half to go of it. And I know my math was faulty there, but I don't care. And this gives this is kind of a dictatorial position, to be honest with you. A lot of people who have there are notable exceptions, like Jimmy Carter has Saturn in the first house. He was an exceptional dictator. But people like Joe Stalin had it, Hitler had a very prominent Saturn in his chart, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of people have, so it tends to be almost dictatorial, almost, there's no other way to do things. It's very rigid, Saturn and Capricorn. Jupiter's there, so it may soften that a little bit. And Mercury's there, and it may make it more open to communication. But the Sun-Saturn conjunction is usually a sign connected with personal integrity, but also with insisting that things be done a certain way. And you're going to see that a lot over the next few months. Mars is in the fourth house. Moon is in the second house, excuse me. That's good for financial gain for this sign. Mars is in the fourth house, not good for relationship life things. So be careful about relationship partners. And Rahu's in the fifth house, so it'll give greedy or difficult children. The good thing about this chart is career life doesn't look affected. It looks like career will be aimed towards selfless service, towards helping people out in need. And also, at least from this chart, you have Venus in the 12th house. So it does mean we're going to be spending a lot over the next couple of months. And this is consistent with what's coming before Congress right now. Um, I think it needs to be spent personally, just to give you my honest opinion. But there's going to be a big battle over it. I think not to state the obvious. Um, so The next sign we're going to look at is Aquarius. Aquarius has the moon in it. That's certainly good, but they should again avoid alcohol, avoid beer, avoid any kind of illicit substance. They're going to be extremely vulnerable to it right now. These signs that I mentioned that were vulnerable to alcohol, be careful about your the people you associate with because you're more prone to illnesses. And also, I mean, it's a good time to get on a good diet regimen or a good exercise regimen too. And it's also a good time to have eye exams done for the sign. And it's also a good time to have to improve their health. And the Lord of the second house sits in the 12th house, so that does mean expenses, probably on wasteful things. Um, Mars is in the third house, so that makes this particular sign rather aggressive in pursuing its goals. Very gives it a lot of energy. Venus is K2's in the 10th. That'll give some career success, some career recognition, and you'll also see people getting unexpected opportunities this month. This with this sign. For there'll be financial gains because Venus is in the 11th house and gains of female friendships. And also some financial expenses, mainly because Saturn, Mercury, Sun, and Jupiter all sit in that 12th house. But there'll also be a lot of interest in spiritual life, a lot of interest in foreign travel. This sign is actually going to do very well, better away from home than it will close to home. Pisces is the last sign. Pisces has Mars in the second house, so again, kind of a Mars affliction combination. Not good for keeping one's temper. Rahu's in the third house. A lot of ambition for this sign this month. K2s, we have no planets in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th houses. K2's in the 10th house. That gives, K2's in the um, 9th house. That gives unexpected luck and unexpected opportunities to the individual. Career life should be sweet, should be very good. Financial gains should be really strong this month from a variety of sources, from both luck and hard work and from government. The only drawback to this particular chart is the Lord of the Fifth is in the 12th house, so it indicates problems to children in terms of expenses and maybe some small indication of physical injury, although it's not going to be serious. So that's it for this week. Again, I would encourage you to smash that like button and subscribe. You do that by ringing that bell on YouTube. And if I get more subscribers, if I get more comments, it'll help the channel grow. If you can share the channel with people, if you like what I'm doing. If you don't like what I'm doing, that's fine. Just tell me and I'll fix it. And I'm always willing to take constructive criticism. The other thing is, if there are topics you want to see me cover, I'm at your command, and just let me know. Again, Gary Gomes, 508-525-0001 is my phone number. My email address is crystalexpectations@comcast.net or neivas@comcast.net. Thank you all and have a wonderful week and keep your optimism up. Things will get a little bit rough over the next 3 to 4 months. They will improve. Okay? Namaste and God bless you, everyone. That's it. You can put a fork in me. I'm done.